Good morning, guys. So, we are discussing Marxian theory of economic development today. Karl Marx, as we know, was a famous philosopher and economist of the 19th century, and his book Das Kapital, which was translated in many languages, is still read by students of economy and philosophy across the world. His theory embraces all spheres of life: social, political, religious, economic, etc., and his views on capitalism and the way it affects the economy and also the lives of the working class were very critical. He theorized socialism as an alternative and more permanent form of development compared to capitalism, which he said breaks down in the long term under sociological forces. To postulate his theory, he made certain important assumptions. He said that there are two classes in the economy: capitalists and workers, where capitalists own all means of production and the workers have only their labor work to sell. That is, the labor class does not own either any land or any other means of production on their own. They are entirely dependent on the capitalists for employment, where they offer their labor work to produce for the capitalists. In return, they get subsistence wages. Further, he talks about a surplus concept, and explains it in great detail. He says that the available supply of labor and the existing means of labor are capable of producing a surplus value. That is, goods and commodities are produced in excess of what is needed to maintain the labor supply and stock of capital intact. That means whatever the costs were incurred in producing a product, including labor work, if we reimburse those costs, even after that, a lot more of the produce is left in excess, called the surplus. This surplus, he says, is owned by the capitalists. And this surplus is what the capitalists are after. Economy is run by exchange of goods and services, and this surplus forms the basis of exchange and hence the growth of capital. Let's write down the assumptions one by one. There is a class struggle on account of clash of economic interests between the two classes. Which are the two classes? The haves and the have-nots. That is, the capitalists and the workers. There is perfect competition in the product and labor market, meaning factors of production are available at competitive prices. There is a perfectly elastic supply of factors of production. Let's revisit micro a bit. What is elasticity of supply? It means sensitivity of the quantity supplied to price. That is, how much supply would change when price changes. We write this as like this: elasticity of supply, let's call this ES, is equal to percentage change in quantity supplied over percentage change in price. Since we are talking about the supply of factors of production, mainly labor, it can be written as percentage change in quantity of labor supplied over percentage change in wage rate. It means that labor supply, which is available at a given wage rate, if this wage rate changes, then what would be the change in quantity or number of labor supplied? There is scope for factor substitution and factors are easily adoptable. It means we can substitute machine for labor or labor for machine and there is no impact on productivity. Example, if there are 5 machines and 10 workers, if maybe due to a technology upgrade I add one self-operating machine and reduce my workforce by, let's say, 1, that is, now I have 6 machines and 9 workers, I am assuming that this change or substitution in my factors of production, which are capital and labor, does not lower my productivity, it may enhance it though, then we say that there is scope for factor substitution. Technological improvement takes place at a rapid rate. This is self-understandable. Marx believed that technology upgrade happens at a fast pace, so he factored it in his growth model assumptions. There exists involuntary unemployment among laborers and they compete for getting employment. Involuntary unemployment is when the workers are available and willing for work, but there aren't many jobs in the market, so those workers have to sit idle, unemployed. The marginal propensity to save of capitalists is very high and near unity, that means near 1, and that of the workers is almost 0. See, the rich always have low propensity to spend compared to their income and wealth because all of their needs for food, shelter, clothing, leisure, etc. have already been met. So they save most of their income and reinvest into profitable ventures to grow their profits more. On the other hand, workers get paid only subsistence level wages. So they have to spend all of their income on daily needs with barely any amount left for savings. Now let's come to Marx's theory of surplus value. Surplus was also defined by many of the economists before Marx, and how this surplus leads to capital accumulation. But Marx defines surplus in a very unique way. According to him, labor possesses a truly unique characteristic. It produces more than its own value. Meaning, whatever the labor needs for its own subsistence, for their daily needs of food and clothing, etc., they produce a lot more than that when they work in the farms or factories. In other words, whatever the capitalists spend on producing a commodity, all the costs of all factors of production and expenses included, there is a surplus production that remains after that. This excess production, this is Marx's, call it surplus, this is Marx's surplus that the capitalists want. More the surplus, more the profit, and more will be the capital accumulation. Capitalists make continuous efforts to enhance this mass of surplus value, and therefore in Marx's theory, labor is characterized as a surplus value yielding factor. Marx considers two conditions for capitalist production. First, private ownership having the concentration of the basic means of production, land and machines, etc. Meaning these means of production, land, machine, tools, technology, everything, they are all concentrated in the hands of the capitalists. They own and control the means of production. Second is the existence of have-nots, that is laborers or workers. If there are no workers, then who will work in the farms and the factories to produce the products? To reiterate, capitalists are the haves who have all the resources and own all the means of production. Workers, on the other hand, are the have-nots, those who do not have any resources other than their hard labor work to sell. As per Marx's theory, in a capitalist society, commodities are produced not for self-consumption but for exchange. And that is how capital accumulation takes place, by exchanging the surplus for capital. More surplus, more capital accumulation. That is why capitalists are always keen on producing as much surplus as possible, so that they are able to increase their wealth. We know by now that surplus is created by the workers, the laborers, when they produce more than their level of subsistence, right? This surplus value can be maximized when the workers are made to work more and paid less than their productive value. Meaning, if the worker's necessary production time to produce subsistence level of goods is 6 hours per day and he is compelled to work 10 hours, then the worker is producing surplus equivalent to 4 hours of his work. Work of 10 hours is taken and wages given for 6 hours only. This 4 hours worth of work is the surplus value being created which makes the capitalist wealthy. Also, capitalist society has another character. Eat the small fish. You only become big, your wealth only maximizes when you have market control. You gain market dominance by crushing and swallowing the small producers and favoring the large producers. Such is the role of surplus in wealth generation that capitalists are always looking to enhance productivity and hence their profits through use of technology and cost reduction techniques. Now, profits are determined by the amount of capital employed. Marx divided capital into two parts. This is very important. Marx divided capital into two parts. Constant capital denoted by C and variable capital denoted by V. In Marxian system, the variable capital consists of workers' wages alone. That is, V consists of workers' wages alone, only the wages of the workers. And constant capital consists of the non-wage part. It consists of the non-wage part, such as factory, buildings, machines, tools, raw materials, etc. Now, surplus value is denoted by M, small m. Therefore, we can say that the total value of product produced is equal to C plus V plus M. That is all the cost or capital in Marxian terms that went into producing the output, which is C plus V, plus the surplus give the total product value. Total cost plus the surplus give the total product value. The ratio C by V is termed as the organic composition of capital. Very important. This ratio C by V is called the organic composition of capital. That is, organic composition of capital is the ratio of constant capital to variable capital. What is constant capital? Capital invested into buildings, machinery, tools, raw materials. That is the non-labor part of production, as we just saw. And what is variable capital? Only labor wages. Only wages of the labor. Marx says that organic composition of capital, let's call it OCC, is equal to C by V. It is called organic composition because this ratio doesn't just reflect a simple financial ratio, it reflects a technological structure of production. As C, which denotes the machinery, increases and V, which denotes the labor, decreases, the structural composition of production shifts from labor intensive to a more mechanized and automated one. What we are doing is we are increasing C, that means we are building more mechanization into our production process, and we are reducing V, which is the variable capital, that means we are reducing the labor part. This results in a tectonic shift in the manner of production as the share of wages go down in the overall capital invested. This is what happens. No, see, when companies lean towards automation, job cuts begin to happen. Unemployment starts increasing. Right? In today's times, look at AI, artificial intelligence, or use of robots and automation in factory assembly lines. Companies have actually started giving the enhanced use of AI as reasons for mass layoffs. A vast majority of tasks are being handled by artificial intelligence now. Marx used to say that in early capitalism, production is labor intensive, that is OCC is low. Over time, as mechanization and automation increase, OCC becomes high, that is OCC tends to go higher. And this structural shift has an implication on profits. We'll come to that in a bit. He gives another ratio M by V. A ratio M by V. He calls it the rate of surplus value, defined as ratio of surplus value to the variable capital M by V. Ratio of surplus value M to the variable capital V. This is also called degree or rate of exploitation of labor. That is, because surplus, as we know now, is extracted from labor. The more work or productivity the capitalist is able to extract from the labor, and the lesser the wage is paid, greater will be this ratio. M, that is surplus, the more it is, and V, that is labor wages, the lesser they are, more will be this ratio M by V, called the degree of exploitation, meaning more the number of hours the labor will work, more will be the surplus they will produce. At the same time, they will get lowly wages, subsistence level ones. Then this ratio M by V will increase, and as a result the degree of exploitation of labor will be high. Now, the growth of surplus M may take place in two ways. The growth of surplus, which we denote as M, may take place in two ways. One is absolute surplus value, also called by Marx as the sweating of labor. That is, increase the working hours of labor, keeping the wage rate same or almost same. Labor is made to work more, they give higher productivity, they are given lower wages. Capitalists make huge surplus. This is called absolute surplus value generation. Absolute surplus value generation, generally seen in blue collar industries and resisted through trade unions. Second, he said, was relative surplus value. That is, reducing working hours by better organization of work and improved technology, making the laborers' work more organized and faster, thereby increasing productivity. This happens through capital deepening techniques, that is, more investment of constant capital, more machinery. This process sees more mechanized workflows, automated tasks, upskilling and better division of labor. This process is more growth oriented than absolute surplus one and is less resisted by the labor class. Therefore, in their quest to increase relative surplus value, the capitalist class focuses on technology and development and hence brings in economic progress. To generate relative surplus, workers are not necessarily working over hours. They are given better technology. A part of the production is automated, so they produce more. Now, according to Marx, there are three stages in the relative surplus value generation process. First is better organization and skilling of labor. Second is enhanced division of labor according to their skill sets. Enhanced division of labor according to their skill sets. Third is the use of automation, mechanization, and labor saving techniques. Under all of these stages, the employers seek to reduce the wages of workers so as to extract maximum surplus, and workers on the other hand try to obtain the maximum possible wages under the prevailing technological conditions. This struggle between the two opposing forces may help in raising the wages of workers to an extent, but they never come close in equivalence to the produce they are producing. Unless, of course, the workers gain political power and obtain the ownership to means of production themselves, because otherwise the means of production are owned by the capitalists. Now that is a social revolution, when the have-nots, that is the workers, obtain political power and begin to own means of production themselves. But till a non-labor government exists, the motive of capitalists remains profits and profits only. That is, extract as much surplus as possible and accumulate wealth. Now, we know that this surplus M comes from the variable capital V, because the more you are able to reduce wages, more will be this surplus, and more surplus means more profit. Therefore, the rate of profit is given as R is equal to M divided by C plus V. R is equal to M divided by C plus V, where R is the rate of profit, that is, rate of profit is the ratio of surplus M as a proportion of total capital employed. C plus V is the total capital employed. We can write this as multiply both numerator and denominator with V. So, this equation can be written as R is equal to MV divided by V into C plus V. MV divided by V into C plus V. It can be further written as R is equal to Let's take M by V out separate into V by C plus V, or R is equal to M by V into 1 by C by V plus 1. 1 by C by V plus 1. Now M by V is equal to rate of surplus. We know that. Alright. And C by V is equal to, what is C by V? OCC. What is OCC? Organic composition of capital. Marx says that the rate of profit changes whenever there is a change in the OCC. Very important to note. He says that the rate of profit changes whenever there is a change in the OCC. And to isolate the effect of OCC on the rate of profit, he assumes the rate of surplus, that is M by V, as constant. So he assumes this particular term M by V as constant so as to isolate the effect of OCC on the rate of profit. Now see the equation carefully. M by V is constant, right? When C by V increases, that is capital increases, labor decreases, this denominator increases. When the denominator increases, this overall part of the equation decreases, and hence R decreases, that is rate of profit declines. Let's understand this one more time, it's important. We have seen that whenever there is technological progress and greater mechanization, OCC increases because C, which is constant capital, increases. Increase in C necessitates reduction in demand for labor. Increase in C necessitates reduction in demand for labor. That is, the demand for labor goes down when the constant capital increases. This creates an industrial reserve army of unemployed workers. An industrial reserve army of unemployed workers, that is a pool of unemployed workers. These are those workers who have been involuntarily laid off. They have been involuntarily laid off. They are willing to work but are unable to find jobs. Now what do we get to know from this? That rate of profit decreases as OCC increases. The rate of profit decreases as OCC increases. You see in this equation, C is increasing due to technological progress. C's increase means that there is greater automation and mechanization. C's increase means that there is greater automation and mechanization. And greater automation means that now a greater proportion of the work can be handled by machines. So labor force is cut down. Labor force reduction means that V is reducing. When the labor force is going down, it means V is reducing, their wages are going down, since variable capital V denotes labor wages. Then, as you see here, we are saying that C by V in the denominator is increasing. When in this equation, denominator is increasing, and we have already said that M by V is constant, therefore rate of profit R is reducing. That is why in Marxian theory, with greater development, greater technological progress, rate of profit decreases over a period of time. Let's take a small example. Suppose a company invests $1,000 in machines. That is, constant capital is equal to $1,000. And $1,000 are in wages also. That is, variable capital is also $1,000. Therefore, OCC is equal to C by V is equal to 1000 by 1000 is equal to 1. Now suppose it increases its investment in machines by $2,000. It increases its investment in machines by $2,000. Now C is equal to 1000 plus 2000 is equal to $3,000. And suppose V remains the same, that is $1,000. Now OCC is equal to 3000 by 1000 is equal to 3. The company is now more dependent on machines and labor is contributing less in proportion. Therefore, it becomes difficult now to extract surplus value as a proportion of total capital invested. because surplus value comes only from labor work and not machines. Therefore, potential surplus shrinks relative to total investment. Since surplus is reduced, so is the profit. Therefore, Marx says that capitalism evolves with higher mechanization and higher technological progress, but at the cost of profits. For a moment, let's return to the concept of industrial reserve army of unemployed workers to understand the social impact of OCC's increase. To understand the social impact of OCC's increase. When such a large number of people are involuntarily laid off, what impact does it have on wages? When such a large number of people are laid off without or against their wish, what impact does it have on wages in the market? Well, with so many people now waiting in line for a job, capitalists get leverage. They can now suppress wages. They try to squeeze labor harder, work hours are lengthened, and work is intensified. Surplus extraction happens from labor work, so the more you are able to extract work from labor, more will be the profit. On the other hand, those who are employed face a speed up challenge, meaning higher productivity demands have to be met by them. Message is clear. If you cannot work more to produce more output, we have thousands waiting in line for your job. This is exactly the leverage that the capitalists have with so many workers waiting in line. What Marx calls as the industrial reserve army of unemployed workers, which is created. The displaced workers are exploited more and more and put into misery. Therefore, rising OCC doesn't just have economic effects, it also has socio-political implications. It creates a sort of capital-labor conflict, where on the one hand capital demands efficiency, that is capitalists demand efficiency, workers on the other hand demand survival. Dispossessed workers, both employed and unemployed, become conscious of their exploitation now, and a ground is laid for a class struggle. A ground is laid for a struggle between the two classes and a social revolution that leads to the overthrowing of capitalism. Marx sees this as a structural way of how capitalism plants the seeds of its own destruction. See in this diagram, as OCC rises, here on the x-axis, as we move from left to right, rate of profit, here see this line, falls. So the rate of profit falls as OCC rises and unemployment rises. The divergence in this gap, see here, this gap is increasing. It shows the class struggle is intensifying. There is a lot more depth to the Marxian theory of development, but I think from economics point of view, the discussion we had today is sufficient. Hope you liked this session. Bye for now and see you in next.